Biden is looking for new ways to energize black voters. And I would like to translate some of this article for those of you who want actual human speak out of this article. Actually what they mean. When it says Biden's looking for new ways to energize black voters, let me translate what that means. First of all, it's not Biden. Okay, Biden's sitting in a chair playing with his oatmeal. So the people around Biden are looking for new ways to get black voters to vote for him when he has done nothing for them in the multiple years he's been president. He promised he was going to do so much for black Americans. He's done essentially zero. And by energize, they mean trick black voters into voting for him again. That's what this article is. The article is the New York Times trying to convince you that Biden cares about black people and really faulting the black voters for not being energized enough. Why is it they're not energized enough? Oh, maybe it's because he's done fuck all for them. Maybe that's what it is. I can't see. Look, the photo they show here of this black person, she just doesn't look energized. She just, maybe she's not eating right, or maybe she didn't get a good sleepy time last night. She's just not energized enough. And it's clearly not Joe Biden's fault, so it must be black voters' fault for not having the energy, for not drinking a Red Bull before they head out there. And this article appears to be, these are tiny thumbnails, but appears to be written by two black people, New York Times writers, who are trying to tell you that Joe Biden does love black people. He just can't seem to get anything done for them. He's tried so hard. He's tried so hard, especially since he is responsible for doubling the prison population, locking up more black and brown people in this country than there were slaves during the time of slavery in America. That can be put on Joe Biden's plate. And so many other racist things can be put on Joe Biden's plate. And yet here we are, the New York Times, asking, why won't black people vote for him with more gusto, more fucking energy? Why aren't they fucking energized? Why aren't they just hopping up and down in line waiting to vote for Joe Biden? So they start off by talking about how Vice President Kamala Harris, you hear a lot about her, don't you? You hear about just how much she's been doing, just achieving so much. Harris has. They started by saying she was speaking to a crowd, and she said, we are looking at a full-on attack on our hard-fought, hard-won freedoms. So much is at stake in the 2024 presidential election, including our very democracy. Oh, it's the most important election of our lifetimes. Where have I heard that before? Where have I heard anyone say it's the most important election of our lifetimes? I can't remember where it was. It just occurred to me. Every fucking year. They say that every goddamn year. They say most important election of our lifetime. Therefore, you have to vote for the shitty, super shitty Democrats. Or maybe the Republicans tell their fan base too. It's the most important ever. So you got to vote for the shitty, super shitty Republicans. It's the most important ever, folks. This is the most important ever. And by the way, when she mentions our hard-fought, hard-won freedoms, first of all, any freedoms we have were not won by the people she's talking about or her type of people. They were won by people on the street. They were won by activists on the front lines. That's who they were won by. They were won by pressuring the ruling elite into thinking they had no choice but to give people civil rights, or to give women the right to vote, or to give workers various perks and things, the various benefits that you get by working at a company. These are all won by amazing activists. They're not won by these shitty politicians who ultimately do it because they feel they have no choice. And then all of that stuff is eroded. It's eroded over time. They start attacking those things. They start attacking whatever it is that you might have had, that you might have gotten. That's what you're ruling elite to. And remember, she's talking on behalf of the party that has grown unlimited surveillance, that has been in power during a lot of the doubling of the prison population, which is not freedom. I don't know if you know that. When you're locked up in prison, that's really the opposite of free. She's representing the party and the ruling elite who have seen the gutting of whatever freedoms these were, who have stood by and allowed so many of them to happen. I mean, even the ones that were not done by the Democratic Party, like losing your right to have a freedom of choice over your own bodies, those rights could have been codified. They could have been put in a permanent nature into our federal law. Any of the times that the Democrats have had both Congress and the presidency, and they didn't. They fucking didn't, because they wanted to use that as a wedge issue, as something that they could keep telling you it's the most important election we've ever seen. In 2020, the New York Times tells you, President Biden promised black voters he would deliver a sweeping racial equality agenda that included a landmark federal voting rights bill, student loan relief, criminal justice reform, and more. 3 years later, much of that agenda has not happened at all. And the New York Times, because the job of the New York Times is really to run interference for the Democrats and try to justify the horseshit that they do, or don't do, really. The way the New York Times phrases it is, with much of the agenda thwarted by Congress or the courts. Yes, that's right. Joe Biden has just tried to be the best president ever, but he's just been stopped by the courts and the Congress. You know how much he could do if he just fucking wanted to? If he did the various things as Trump did, going around the courts, going around the Congress, he could do all kinds of shit. I went through, I wrote an article whenever Biden became president. I don't know. All these years are a blur. I don't even know. What year is it? I mean, I'm a deep fake now. So it's like, I don't even know what's happening. But like 3 years ago, I put out an article of, it was like the 12 or 15 things that Joe Biden could have done on day one with executive actions, and done none of them. Most people don't even know that Joe Biden has that ability, because Democrats don't want you to know. One example is to give everyone health care. He could do that with an executive action on day one. When he got into office, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and there's a law in the U.S. saying that an area of people, if they're facing an environmental health hazard, can be given free health care, can be given universal health care. It's within U.S. law. And there's only one place that I know of that has it. It's Libby, Montana. The entire town gets free health care because of the asbestos mines near them. But that's the only one that has it. I think that's the only one. Joe Biden could have done it for the whole nation. He could have said, we're in a pandemic, everyone gets health care. But of course, even outside of the pandemic, you could have done it for just about everywhere. There's 2,000 cities that have unclean water in the United States. There's elevated lead levels that are unsafe to drink in many cities. The air is sickening. The fucking forest fire smog here on the East Coast, where we can't even go outside some days. You could come up with an environmental threat anywhere in the United States, give everyone health care. That's just one example of what Joe Biden could have done. Fucking not at all. But the New York Times wants you to believe that all these things he's failed on, it's just Congress. Just Congress won't let him. In an opinion essay published on Sunday in the Washington Post, marking the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, Mr. Biden, and that if it said he wrote an opinion essay for the Washington Post, that means Antony Blinken wrote an opinion piece on the Washington Post and then signed Joe Biden's name. Which is kind of funny, because Joe Biden dropped out of his first presidential run in the 1980s because he was caught for plagiarism. So it's kind of funny that now other people are writing his essays for the Washington Post. Oh, isn't it nice how the world comes full circle? That's so great how that works. So he wrote this on the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Of course, there's massive irony there. Just the fact that the type of politician that Joe Biden is did not celebrate or support civil rights. Biden was against um, or for desegregation. Against desegregation. He was for segregation until he wasn't. He was good friends, best buddies with Strom Thurmond, a straight up racist. He, of course, supported all these cop bills and prison bills that are completely racist. Joe Biden has been racist throughout his entire career in all of his policies. And all of a sudden, here he is saying, on the 60th anniversary of MLK's March on Washington, I just want to say that I love black voters. Also, let's remember that the federal government that Biden represents and Biden has been a big part of for the 900 years of his career, they're the ones that murdered Martin Luther King Jr. And I have covered this many times. Many people are afraid to cover it, but MLK Jr. was actually, I probably shouldn't say it because of the algorithm and reading the transcripts, but he was actually killed by FBI and Memphis police. See, that's the problem is if I talk for an hour, then I might only have one or two sentences that mean that YouTube and everything else are not going to show my video to anyone. But the problem is I always have one or two sentences. You let me talk for an hour, there's going to be at least one or two sentences where the algorithm's like, whoa, ha, oh, too spicy for my blood. Can't show that to the peoples. That sentence is always gonna get in there somewhere. If you want to hear the truth about MLK, listen to my podcast, Government Secrets, where we go into that and we go into the truth about anyway, that's all on Government Secrets podcast. You can go back into old episodes and listen to those. But all right, so he wrote this op-ed about how he just loves black voters. Joe Biden, just like, in fact, he said in the op-ed that he really wants to smell all of their hair. He just wants to walk up behind them when they're not looking and smell their hair. That's how much he loves black voters. And it's just so nice of him to do that for people, to just smell all of their hair. The president wrote that his administration was, quote, advancing equity in everything we do, making unprecedented investments in all of America, including for black Americans. The largest prison state in the world with a racist system wants you to know that they're doing everything they can for equity, to make sure there's equality. They spend day and night just trying to make sure that happens in the largest prison state in the world, with one of the largest police forces in the world, per capita, the largest police force in the world, that Joe Biden has never taken a dollar from, never, not just defunded. He's never said, hey guys, could you shift like 5% of your budget over to the kids who aren't able to eat lunch? Never said that in his entire career. But yeah, he wants you to know he's trying to get equality. He's really on the equality bandwagon is what he is.